Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this tutorial on the Annual Debt Transparency Report, also known as the ADTR. My name is Tara Dunn. I am the manager of CDIAC's Technical Assistance section, and I oversee both the Data Collection and Analysis Unit and the Education Unit. For this tutorial, I will be presenting an overview of the Annual Debt Transparency Report and a walkthrough of how to submit the report using CDIAC's new online platform called the Data Portal. After the walkthrough, I will be joined by Jeff Field, the manager of our Data Collection and Analysis Unit, and Michael Hewitt, an associate analyst within the Data Unit, to answer questions. Moving on to slide 2, we encourage you to submit questions at any time using the box marked Questions near the bottom of your control panel. Any questions we receive will be held until the live Q&A session near the end of the program. Access to live captioning is available during this presentation at the address you see on this slide. The link is also posted in the chat section at the bottom of your control panel, so you can copy and paste the web address into a second browser window. CDIAC makes all of our webinars available for replay. This tutorial will be available in 2 places. The first is our Ed Portal, which is our learning management system, and the second place will be on our Reporting Debt Issuance webpage as a link to YouTube. All registrants will receive these web links via email once they are completed, usually within a couple of weeks. If you are currently experiencing any technical issues, please call GoToWebinar's toll-free number 877-582-7011 or go to the link support.goto.com/webinar. Finally, we will email certificates of attendance to those who participate in the webinar today. To be eligible for a certificate, you must have personally registered and have remained logged in for 70% of the webinar. If you meet those 2 basic requirements, you'll receive the certificate within a couple of weeks. During this presentation, I will give an overview of the ADTR's enactment, the timeline for reporting, and then start the walkthrough of the data portal, beginning with signing into the portal and how to view and edit the user profile. I'll talk about associated issuers and authorized filers, and then dive into the annual debt transparency report itself. After the walkthrough is complete, we will have a live Q&A session with Jeff and Michael. Our goal at CDIAC is to simplify this process of submitting the ADTR as much as possible for issuers and filers. SB 1029 was signed in 2016 and became effective on January 1, 2017. The legislation added Section 8855K to CDIAC's statute in the Government Code and requires all issuers, state and local, to submit an annual report for any debt issue for which a report of final sale has been submitted to CDIAC on or after January 21, 2017. CDIAC refers to this annual report as the Annual Debt Transparency Report, or ADTR. The ADTR must be submitted to CDIAC on or before January 31st of each year for each issue of debt until the debt is no longer outstanding or the proceeds of the debt have been fully spent, whichever is later. This slide shows the number of reportable issues since 2017. As you can see, the ongoing reportable issues have steadily increased every year from about 2,000 issues the first year to over 14,000 issues for the current reporting period that are due to be filed by the end of this month. Here are the key dates in the timeline for reporting to keep in mind. A debt issue is reportable for any report of final sale submitted to CDIAC on or after January 21st, 2017. The reporting period is July 1st through June 30th, so any debt issue that has been sold and has closed with a settlement date on or before June 30th will be required to submit an ADTR by the following January 31st. The data portal will automatically display reportable debt issues with a status of pending on the dashboard for the ADTR every July 1st, which I will show you a little later. And lastly, CDIAC also posts on its reporting debt issuance webpage the list of reportable issues as a spreadsheet for the current reporting period, generally by the end of August. So you can download the spreadsheet to view all the debt issues for an issuer and then log in to the data portal to see them as pending, waiting to be started. Okay, now I'll move on to the data portal walkthrough. The web address for the data portal is dataportal.treasurer.ca.gov, and there are links to this web address on our home page as well as our reporting debt issuance webpage. Using data already contained in the database, we identified and used active contacts with an email address to create a list of pre-registered users previously identified as an issuer or a filing contact. These pre-registered users were sent a temporary password when the data portal went live for the first time. To check if your email was sent a temporary password, please follow the instructions in the data portal sign-in guide located on CDIAC's Reporting Debt Issuance webpage. From the data portal's landing page, click the sign-in button and log in with your email and password. Once you have signed in, your default home page is Issuer Selection. You should also see the email you used to sign in displayed in the upper right corner of the browser window with a triangle next to it. There are three main sections on this default homepage. The Issuer Selection drop-down menu at the top, a section showing the associated issuers on this account, meaning this specific email, and a section that will show the authorized filers once an issuer has been selected. As I pointed out a moment ago, the email you used to log in should be displayed in the upper right corner of the browser window with a triangle next to it. By clicking the triangle, you can view your profile for this email as well as to log out of the data portal. Since I'm logged in as a filer, a box pops up that says Edit Filer, showing an organization name, an organization type, the division, a comment box, and all of the contacts the data portal has for that organization. What I want to point out here is that any existing registered user, whether a filer or an issuer, can view their profile and either view or edit users or create new contacts. Here you can see the fourth column shows whether a user is active or not. So if there are old contacts listed, those can be turned off from being active by clicking the pencil icon. If you're interested in updating contact information for your entity, whether you're a filer or an issuer, a user profile guide is posted on CDIAC's Reporting Debt Issuance webpage. From the default home page, as a filer with a registered email, the associated issuer's My Organization has an approved status for will appear in the drop-down menu, as well as in the associated issuers section below. These issuers are the specific issuers a filer may choose from to submit reports for. A filer may also edit or view reports subject to certain conditions. If an issuer you wish to file for does not appear in the list, scroll to the bottom of the dashboard and click the Add Issuer button. Find and choose the issuer from the list And when choosing an issuer from the list, make sure you are choosing the correct one. For example, CDIAC has historically used naming conventions to create Community Facilities Districts, CFDs, as separate issuers, and tend not to have the words City of in names of cities. Once the issuer has been selected, click Save. This action will send your request through an approval cycle in the form of an email notification to active issuer representatives and to CDIAC as well. While the request is waiting for approval from the issuer, the status will show as pending. CDIAC will always defer to the issuer first to approve filer requests. Please note an issuer representative may remove an authorized filer, which means the entire filer's organization at any time from the issuer's default homepage. This is a new feature which allows the issuer control over which organizations and their user contacts have access to the issuer's debt issuance reporting submissions. Filer representatives may also remove an associated issuer at any time by clicking the trash can icon in the action column. Going back to the top, once an issuer has been selected and the Submit button is clicked, the dashboard changes and adds two more sections: Quick Actions and the Dashboard, which is used for reporting debt issuance. In addition, authorized filers now appear for the selected issuer. The annual debt transparency report is required for all debt in which a report of final sale has been submitted to CDIAC on or after January 21, 2017. Therefore, it is crucial that the information on the report of final sale, also known as the RFS, is accurate and complete, because ADTRs, as well as other ongoing annual reports, will pre-populate from the data submitted on the RFS. And for the ADTRs specifically, the data is also cumulative from prior ADTRs filed for the debt issue for previous reporting periods. The data portal allows users to access both issuance reports, such as the RFS and the report of proposed debt, and ongoing and annual reports, such as the ADTR. However, a user's ability to view or edit previous reports is subject to certain conditions because access becomes restricted once an ongoing annual report has been started. To view annual debt transparency reports due to be filed for this issuer, the filters to select must include ongoing annual reports, the annual debt transparency report selected from the type of report drop-down menu, and new and pending reports. After clicking the Go button, the dashboard will populate with the CDIAC numbers of debt issues that are due to be filed for the selected issuer, including the fiscal year-end date, which is the end date of the reporting period, and a few key fields to help identify the debt issue. The statuses that will show using the new and pending filter are pending, past due, submitted, and draft. The pending status means that the ADTR is now due for the reporting period, which ended June 30th, 2022. Debt issues will automatically display a pending status on July 1st until an ADTR has been submitted in which the principal is no longer outstanding and the proceeds have been spent. The debt issues that are past due mean the prior reporting period's ADTR has not been submitted or started, and it is currently over 12 months since the end of that reporting period. When a debt issue is past due for a prior reporting period, the data portal will display the oldest reporting period that is due because the data collected on the ADTR is cumulative. The submitted status means that the ADTR has been submitted to CDIAC and is pending review. The draft status means that the ADTR has been started, but has not yet been submitted to CDIAC for review. The action a user can initiate for pending and past due reports is Report ADTR. The actions a user can initiate for submitted and draft reports are Edit and Cancel. Columns can be sorted by clicking the column header. Each of these debt issues were issued in different years, which you can see displayed in the actual sale date column. I will use the most recent issue to start an ADTR for this debt issue's first reporting period. To start the report, choose Report ADTR using the Action button. The ADTR reporting page will display the CDIAC number and the reporting period end date for the report being started. Once the Submit button is clicked, an ADTR will be created and listed as draft status in the dashboard until it is submitted for review or canceled. The ADTR reporting page consists of 8 sections identified along the top by icons. These icons can be clicked on to jump to that section. The sections are Issuance, Issuance Authorization, Principal Outstanding, Use of Proceeds, Filing Contact, Comments, ADTR Reportable, and Review. I will walk through each of these sections in a moment. The top of the page also includes a quick reference guide about the ADTR, a Print PDF Draft button to save a draft of the report, a link back to the dashboard, a button to expand or collapse all of the sections at once, and a Show History link, which will display copies of the report as it is saved. The black circles with the question mark in them contain instructions and guidance for that data field. To view the guidance, hover over the question mark or click on it. When filing the first ADTR for a debt issue, users should make sure that the information pre-populated from the Report of Final Sale is accurate. Specifically in the Issuance section, pay attention to the actual sale date and the settlement date, the principal amount, and the net issue premium discount amount. These specific fields are important because the actual sale date and settlement date establish the first reporting period an ADTR is due, and the principal and original issue premium and original issue discount amounts establish the initial principal outstanding balance and the total proceeds amount to report on. If any of these fields is inaccurate, this ADTR should be canceled and the RFS should be edited and corrected before recreating the first ADTR. The only editable field in this issuance section is proceeds used to acquire local obligations, Marx-Rus only. These amounts refer only to Marx-Rus financing structures where, as the field name indicates, the proceeds were used to acquire local obligations. This amount is reportable on the first ADTR only because it will affect the total reportable proceeds amount used in the Use of Proceeds section below. Make sure to click Save and Next after each section is completed. The next three sections of the ADTR collect the information issuers must submit as described in Government Code Section 8855K, including the debt authorized, the debt outstanding, and the use of proceeds. The issuance authorization section will always need to be edited every year, even if the amounts are zero. Click on the Edit button to update the fields that must be filled in. The first three fields are populated from the report of final sale. If this information is wrong, the RFS should be corrected first, and this draft ADTR should be canceled and recreated. The amount authorized at the beginning of the reporting period is only editable on the first ADTR. On subsequent ADTRs, this field will be read-only and pre-populate with the total authorization remaining from the prior year's ADTR. The amount authorized during the reporting period is an editable field for every ADTR, not just the first one. If the authorization date was within the reporting period, enter the original authorized amount. If the authorized amount was increased during the reporting period, but not as a result of a replenishment reported on another report of final sale, which would appear in the field replenishment reported during the reporting period, then enter the amount of the increase. The total debt authorized is a field calculating the totaling the two fields above it. Debt issued during the reporting period will pre-populate a total of all the debt issues using this specific issuance authorization, so the resolution or the voter measure, reported to CDIAC on an RFS during the reporting period. So if there is another debt issue or issues using the same issuance authorization that was issued and closed between July 1st and June 30th, this field will tally those issued amounts. Similarly, the replenishment reported during the reporting period will pre-populate with a total of any replenishments for other debt issues using this specific issuance authorization as reported on an RFS for the reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. The total debt authorized but unissued is a calculated field totaling the three fields above. The authorization lapsed is an editable field for every ADTR, not just the first one. A lapse is a permanent reduction of the authorization and could be for reasons including an expiration or a direct action of the governing body. The total authorization remaining at the end of the reporting period is a calculated field of the two fields above it, which are the total debt authorized but unissued and the authorization lapsed amounts. For this specific debt issue, this resolution's authorization date was in April of 2022. So the authorized amount at the beginning of the reporting period, which was July 1st, 2021, when the resolution wasn't approved yet, would be zero. The amount authorized during the reporting period would be the original authorized amount of $30 million approved in April 2022. So we'll put 30 million. As you can see, the total debt authorized is now $30 million. The debt issued during the reporting period shows 25 million, which is this debt issue. There was nothing replenished, and the total debt authorized but an issue now shows as $5 million. But I know that this authorization has expired, so I'm going to add $5 million and the authorization lapsed. And that should change the total authorization remaining at the end of the reporting period to zero. Please note that there can be more than one issuance authorization entered on the report of final sale, such as a resolution and a voter measure approved at an election. If there are multiple issuance authorizations, each one will pre-populate from the RFS and each one will need to be edited on the ADTR. When this section is complete, click Save and Next. For the first ADTR, the principal outstanding section will pre-populate the principal balance upon sale from the report of final sale. After that, the principal amount will pre-populate from the principal outstanding amount as reported on the ADTR for the prior reporting year. The enterable fields in this section are accreted interest, principal paid with proceeds from other debt issues, and principal payments. Accreted interest applies to a debt issue that is a capital appreciation bond or a CAB, and the amount that should be reported is the interest amount that accreted during the reporting period, which will add to the total principal outstanding for this debt issue. Principal paid with the proceeds from other debt issues means a debt issue in which the proceeds were used to pay the principal on this debt issue. The Refunding Refinancing Issues table at the bottom of this section will display any CDIAC numbers that were reported on our RFS to pay down this specific debt issue and the amount and date if it's available. This table is for reference only to give the user information that may be useful when reporting principal payments, but it is not used to pre-populate any reportable data on this ADTR. It should also be noted that the amounts displayed from the debt issues reported before the data portal went live in June 2022 may be overstated due to a difference in the way this information was tracked historically versus the way it is now reported by users submitting the RFS through the data portal. The third enterable field is principal payments. These would be payments such as regular debt service. And then also included in this section is a reference field from the Mello or Marks Roos yearly fiscal status report to show whether this debt issue was reported as fully redeemed and no longer outstanding, since those reports are due to be filed earlier than the ADTR due date and may be useful for a user to know. The use of proceeds section is where users will provide details on how reportable proceeds were spent. Before I get into the details, I would like to point out that there are reference fields at the end of this section that may be useful for filers. These include details for Mello and Marks Roos submissions, since those reports also collect fund and balance information that may apply to the ADTR. The total cost of issuance reported on this issue's report of final sale, and any refunded or refinanced issue information collected on this issue's report of final sale may be helpful for completion of the expenditures in the current reporting period. Okay, going back to the top. When filing the first ADTR for a debt issue, fund categories must be established and the total reportable proceeds must be assigned to those fund categories. After the first ADTR, the fund categories and amounts may not be added or edited. The total proceeds amount appears in the issuance section, so I find it's useful to open the issuance section to see the total reportable proceeds when setting up the fund categories on the first ADTR. There are 6 fund categories to choose from, including capitalized interest, construction fund, cost of issuance, refunding escrow account, reserve fund, and other. Select a category enter the amount of proceeds in each and select Add Fund. This issue's total reportable proceeds must be assigned to a fund category, and category edits and deletions may be made in the table once they are added, but only on this first ADTR. In subsequent years, as I mentioned, fund categories and amounts may not be added or edited, and the table below will pre-populate with fund and expenditure data and accumulate when future ADTRs are submitted. It is entirely up to the issuer on how many fund categories are established to provide the detail on how the proceeds are spent. I tend to favor simplicity. So for this issue, I see the total reportable proceeds amount from the issuance section equals $27 million. And I see at the bottom that the total cost of issuance reported on the report of final sale was $90,000. So I will establish a cost of issuance fund for $90,000 and a construction fund for the remaining balance. If you make a mistake and click Add Fund without a category or amount, you can just delete it by clicking the trash can icon. As I add these categories, the amounts will populate above in the reportable proceeds section for the reporting year as the beginning amount. The spent amount shows as 0, so I haven't added any expenditures yet, and the remaining amount will automatically calculate the beginning amount minus anything spent to give the remaining amount balance. The total at the bottom of the second column of the fund category should equal the total reportable proceeds available and match the beginning amount and total reportable proceeds in the issuance section above. And it does. The spent amounts for reportable proceeds and fund category table will automatically populate after expenditure details are added next. Now that the fund categories have been established, details about expenditures may be entered under the subtitle Expenditure of Proceeds. To add an expenditure, start by selecting a fund category, enter a purpose, and add the amount of the expenditure that was spent in the current reporting period, and then click the Add Expenditure button. I'll add 2 expenditures from the construction fund called Building 1 for $5 million and a second called Building 2 for $2 million. These amounts now automatically appear in the tables above as spent amounts for the current reporting period. And below, the expenditure details are displayed individually for the current reporting period and in a summary table of all expenditures that will accumulate over the reporting periods. If identical purpose descriptions are used year to year, the expenditure by purpose will sum across reporting years. I can show an example by adding another construction fund purpose called Building 2 for another amount which now displays the individual amounts from the construction fund for Building 2 in the current reporting period, but tallies the amount for Building 2 in the summary table. Edits and deletions of the expenditures may be made by clicking on the pencil or trash can icons in the table. And if the purpose of an expenditure is to refund, refinance, or pay down other debt of the issuer, Please enter a separate expenditure for each refunding event and include the CDIAC number of the refunded debt. As I pointed out earlier, refunded and refinanced issues that were reported on this debt issue's report of final sale should populate in this table as a reference field so that expenditures may be added for those specific refundings or refinancings. Okay, now that I have established the fund categories that will be used for this and future ADTRs, and I have added the expenditures for the current reporting period, I can review the information to make sure the reportable proceeds and fund categories and expenditures providing the details for what was spent are correct. So we should have the beginning amount, which matches the total reportable proceeds from the issuance section, as I mentioned earlier. The spent amount during this current reporting period is listed as $9 million, and the remaining amount, which will be the beginning amount for the next reporting period and date, will be $18 million. And so those amounts should add up to the totals that are listed under the fund category detail, and then should also match the expenditure detail, at least for the proceeds spent during the current reporting period, as listed on the report. Make sure to click Save and Next. The filing contact will display the information for the person completing the report. This might change if the report is saved as a draft and then completed by somebody else. Whoever submits the report, their contact information will be captured in the report. There's a comment section to add any comments that you wish CDIAC staff to know during their review of the ADTR. The ADTR reportable section will show the principal outstanding for this particular ADTR and as well as the proceeds that are unspent. When both of these amounts add up to zero, this will no longer be a reportable debt issue, and the ADTR reportable next reporting year field will change to no automatically. The review section is a way for a user to review all of the different fields that have been entered and to just kind of have a look at every single data field. And this is also what will be in the PDF that's created, either as the draft at the top of the page, or once it's submitted, there will be a submitted PDF that will be contained in the show history. So we'll go ahead and validate and submit and see if anything pops out that we forgot to update. It looks good. My PDF automatically appears, which I can save, and it should also appear in the show history as submitted. So you can also click on the PDF and obtain this particular copy of the report. Now, it's important to note, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that edits to prior reports are restricted. So this particular report, having been submitted, will now show in the dashboard as submitted, and will still allow edits to be made if it's found out that an edit needs to be made. So this particular issue is here, 25 million for this amount. It's now showing a status of submitted. So I can still edit this document before CDIAC reviews and drafts as well. But once next year's ADTR has been started as a draft, this report will no longer be viewable or editable by any user. So if you need to look at prior ADTRs or need access to them, contact us at the CDIAC_issuance email, and we can help you with that. I mentioned a few times during the presentation that the report of final sale may need to be edited if certain data fields are incorrect before starting the first ADTR for a debt issue. So if I want to look at or edit the RFS for the debt issue I just submitted an ADTR for, I will make a note of the sale date, which is June 1st, 2022, because I will use that in my search. To search for a prior RFS that has been reviewed by CDIAC, the filters to select must include Issuance, Report of Final Sale selected from the Type of Report drop-down menu, and View Previous Reports. After clicking the Go button, a search box will appear with the selected issuer automatically populating the issuer name, and your search terms can include the issue name of the debt and the sale date range. I tend to favor the sale date range. It automatically defaults to the prior year and automatically defaults to ongoing reportable issues. So if I unclick this ongoing reportable issue box, then it will return debt issues that are no longer outstanding. And I'll click the search button. So here, the report of final sale is displayed on my dashboard for the issue that I just reported on for the ADTR. The actions available are edit and draw on reserve default replenishment if that applied, but it doesn't. So we're going to click on edit. And because the first ADTR has been submitted, an alert pops up that warns me that any edits to this transaction may invalidate the in-process subsequent annual reports, and if I want to continue. And so I'll click yes, because I still want to look at the report of final sale. So the RFS fields to review are the principal and premium discount sections in the issuance section, because those will pre-populate the ADTR. And we'll want to look at maybe sale date and settlement date, which is in the dates section. So the actual sale date's here, settlement date is here. And then of course, issue authorizations, because those have to be reported on as well in the ADTR. So keep in mind, if any changes are made, you must cancel the draft or submitted ADTR and then recreate it. For example, many debt issues have already been reportable for a few years with ADTRs that have been filed, so users will not be able to access those older reports of final sale since at least one ongoing annual report has already been filed. So I'll show an example of that. And we'll go back longer in the sale date range to, let's say, oh, I don't know, 2015. And the search will pull up more reports of final sale that are still reportable. And you'll see that in this ongoing reportable column over here. And now let's say, I'll look at an older one. So if I want to try and look at 2019, let's see if it'll let me. Nope. So this is the alert that you will get. You cannot edit this transaction as annual filings for this report of final sale exist in reviewed status. So it already has at least one annual filing that has been reviewed, and I will no longer be able to look at the RFS. So if you find any discrepancies on that precedent information in a report of final sale and you aren't able to access it, let us know and we can try and help you. And similarly, if edits need to be made to a prior ADTR, the only report accessible to edit through the dashboard will be the last one filed because the amounts accumulate over the reporting periods. Okay, we've gone through the walkthrough and we're going to switch to the live Q&A. So just stand by. We're going to bring up our slide. I'm going to invite Jeff and Michael to join me, and we will go through the questions that we've received. Starting with, I got a number of questions about whether the slides will be available. We can make the slides available, but most of the content is going to be the video walkthroughs. And so, yes, we can make them available, but once we post the videos on YouTube and in our learning management system called the Ed Portal, we'll also let you know so you have access to the video walkthroughs. So hopefully that helps you, but yes, we can provide PDFs of at least the initial slides before we started the videos. So before I pitch some questions to Jeff or Michael, I had a few that came in. One question was, under the cancel dropdown for the action, what does that do? What it will do is, if even depending on whatever kind of report you're in, it applies to report of proposed debt or report of final sale, but also ADTRs and the yearly fiscal status. It will actually delete the report. It'll alert you, do you really want to do this? If you do, click yes, then it will basically delete that report and you'll need to start all over by recreating it. So that cancel button, just make sure that's what you want to do. And then I think we'll start with some of the questions. So one of the first questions that came in, I'll have Jeff answer, and it was, are private placements required to be reported to CDIAC? Jeff, you want to take that one?
I am unmuted, cool. Private placements, well, I'll give you the textbook answer first. If I want to send a link in the, well, it'll be made available. If an issue, if a transaction meets the CDIAC definition of debt, and that definition is codified, it's in the Code of Regulations, it is considered reportable to CDIAC, meaning a report of proposed debt issuance or report of final sale, and probably subsequently an ADTR yearly will need to be filed for that transaction. And that's irrespective of whether it's a private sale, a private placement, or a public offering, you know, like a GO bond or something of that nature. Easily half of the reports that we receive are for what you would call a private placement debt transaction. We get them for multifamily housing, conduit loans, you know, tax exempt loans, things like that, for bond issues that are direct placements, equipment leases, pretty much any instance of a municipal agency borrowing will meet the definition of debt according to the CDIAC regs. Now, concerning the ADTR specifically, the first thing that needs to happen to make the ADTR requirement a thing is this report of final sale that was referred to in depth in the video we just watched. That needs to be filed first in order to set the whole kind of reporting life cycle process in motion. So kind of by default, if we don't get a report of final sale for the transaction in the first place, well, then the ADTR isn't going to happen either. But the requirement to file is basically any debt, and that applies to, that goes as far as the report of final sale and also the ADTR. So most private placements, yes.
Okay,
I put I'll figure out how to do it, but I'll put a link somewhere to the regs where everybody can find it.
Yeah, the regs are on our reporting debt issuance webpage.
Okay.
Okay, next question that came in.
Labeled as such.
Yes, correct.
Okay, okay.
The next question came in. If my loan agreement is dated September 2022, would my first report be due in January 2023 or January 2024? Michael, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the reporting period, like was mentioned, is July 1st through June 30th of the following year. So anything with a settlement or delivery date in September of 2022 will have its first ADTR due in January of 2024.
Right, I think you said July 1 through June 30th of the following year. It's actually the prior year, but yes, 2024 for anything in September 2022. Thanks. Let's see. Oh, another one for Michael. Is premium reported as a positive number and discount reported as a negative number?
When a filer is submitting the reports, everything they enter is going to be in a positive format. You're not going to put any negative numbers in. The form itself, if the discount is higher than the premium, will calculate it out as a negative number and display that. But when you're typing it in, everything will be entered as positive.
Great. Another question that came in, if an issuer has hired us to file their ADTR and our approval is pending, how do we get CDIAC to give us approval to make the filing? Jeff, will you answer that, please?
Sorry. The one way is for a representative of the issuing agency to navigate to via the data portal to that spot where they can approve the request, give the authorization to the filer of their own accord. That is one way. Or assuming that, or in the case that the representative of the issuing agency cannot get access to the data portal, is having trouble gaining access to the data portal, or is otherwise indisposed, I suggest sending an email to CDIAC_issuance@treasurer.ca.gov and just briefly explain, you are who you are, representing this public agency that is a debt issuer, and you wish to acknowledge and authorize the access of your designated agent, and name that person to file on your behalf, and then I can, or CDIAC staff can take care of the approval via the data portal, and then you can proceed. So go to the data portal. So the issuer can go to the data portal and make the approval happen themselves, or they can email us and we can do it.
Okay, the next question is from Michael. If I am responsible for the ADTR of one of my organization's debt issues, but the issuer will be responsible for the ADTR of the other, is that a problem?
No, there shouldn't be any issues in that kind of scenario. The way the data portal is set up, when the issuer logs in or any approved filers for that issuer, they'll see the same list of reportable issues, and then you can just pick and choose from that list which reports you want to file. You're not locked into reporting for all of them or anything like that.
Great, great. Okay, next question. Jeff, there's a question about leaseback transactions. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's kind of building on the question about private placements, usually leasebacks or private placements, and these are basically transactions where a capital asset is monetized to create a revenue stream. Between the way it's structured is between two public agencies, usually an authority and a corporation, or a city, county, and a corporate. Anyway, yes, leasebacks are considered reportable, and we get them a lot.
All right. Okay, and then the next question, for the fund category reserve, how do we report the balance when the bonds are parity bonds, that one reserve account for multiple bond series? And that's for Jeff.
Let's see. The bonds are parity bonds. One reserve account for multiple bond series. I don't know if I should. That would be one where I would want to look at a bond purchase agreement or an indenture or an official statement or something to see. Because when you say multiple bond series, I'm not sure whether we're talking about something like a general obligation bond where you have a tax exempt series and a taxable series, and one reserve account for both, or if you're talking about two separate issues that are concurrently sold, and yeah, that's a tough one. I would almost need to see. I would almost need to see a specific example of that to.
Yeah, and we can always work with you on these.
You're talking about one fund as being beholden to multiple issues, is the way I'm reading this. And you know, I don't want to start saying stuff about, just break it out pro rata based on the share of the total principal. That's the easy answer, but that might not be the way you want to go.
I think in this case, we defer to how the issuer would like to report the proceeds. So if they wanted to break it up, I think that would be fine. Or if they wanted to pick one series and report it on that, that would be fine as well, as long as the proceeds were accounted for. You can always hit us with those questions, just exactly like that, if they come up as you're doing the reports. Okay. Let's see. Another one for you, Jeff. Should the spent amount be based on the drawdown date or date the cost was incurred?
Yeah, this is, are we doing cash-based accounting or accrual-based accounting? I learned the meaning of both of those when we started doing the ADTRs. Basically it's does the expenditure happen when we cut the check, or does the expenditure happen when we set the money aside because we know we're going to have to disperse it? That is at the discretion of the filer. The statute makes the statute doesn't really even define spent. So we're not going to come after you if you report funds that are unspent, report funds as unspent because you haven't cut the check yet. and by the same token, we're not going to come after you because you report funds as spent, even though they're still sitting there in your project fund, but they're otherwise allocated. So discretion of the filer.
All right, next question is for Michael. If part of the proceeds were used to set up a reserve account, is that considered as spent, or do we need to keep reporting the reserve balance each year?
That's basically the same answer as the previous question. It's up to the discretion of the issuer and the filer. The only thing I would add is that if the issuer wants the specificity in the report about exactly what the funds were spent on, then you would have to wait to report it as spent so that you can list out the specific expenditures.
Okay. And then we had a question that came in about under the proceeds spent unspent at the fund level, it shows the proceeds remaining as 0, but when you click on the parent PDF draft, it shows an amount and it should be 0. So I did assign this one to Michael, but we are experiencing a bug in that print PDF portion. We are working on getting it fixed. So there were 2 questions that came related to that. So we are working on it and we hope to have that updated shortly. Let's see.
We feel your pain times 10 on that one.
Yes.
At least I do.
But we do appreciate if we didn't happen to see it, let us know when those things occur so that we can take a look and get them fixed with our portal. Another question that came in, if we have a state revolving fund loan, do we need to report it in this system? And I'll assign this one to Jeff.
Short answer, yes, you do. The SRF loans present all kinds of problems. They are extremely incongruous with the kind of base presumptions that this whole enterprise is set upon. You know, do the best you can and we'll work with you. One of the things that people encounter is maybe the chief thing that people have trouble with when it comes to file the ADTR is they find that the cap amount of the loan agreement has been reported as principal issued. So let's say your SRF loan has the loan agreement you signed has a max amount of $50 million. And so then you come to file, oh, I got to file an ADTR, and you've got to account for $50 million of expenditure. Well, you know, let's say you signed a loan agreement in year 1 and you didn't even start the project till year 2. Well, you know, you're then being asked to report on, you know, $50 million that was never there, things like that. So we've done stuff like, you know, adjust the previously reported principal amount. This system, ideally, hopefully, the new data portal will allow you to go in and make adjustments to that time of issue report, that report of final sale report. So if it has been reported that the cap amount, the not to exceed amount, was the, you know, amount of proceeds you're going to need to account for, well, you can go and adjust that before you proceed with your ADTR. So if your total draws in the reporting period on your SRF were only 5 million of the 50, well, then you can make that adjustment on the report of final sale so the numbers more match up in aggregate with the amount of expenditure that actually occurred. You know, but yeah, we've been around and around and gone on with those things, and you know, do the best you can. We'll work with you to the extent that we can we can make accommodations.
Okay, I have a question for Michael. How do we report investment earnings on construction and reserve funds?
The short answer for that one would be that you don't. The ADTR is set up to track specifically the debt that was issued, the outstanding balance of the debt, and then the expenditures that the debt was used towards. You don't need to report anything about the investment earnings, or a lot of times there'll be like funds on hand that were used for the projects, but none of that gets reported on the ADTR itself.
Okay, and then another question for you. Is the data reported for the fiscal year or and not the calendar year?
Yeah, we mentioned that before, but yes, like for the reports that are due this month, for example, it'll be the period from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, so fiscal year.
Okay, so yeah, anything that closed after June 30th, 2022 is not due until January 2024. All right, let's see. Okay, Jeff, are energy prepay bonds issued for the benefit of community choice aggregators which prepay energy for up to 30 years also required to file annually? I would think yes.
I would have to investigate that. Energy prepay bonds issued for the benefit of community choice aggregators, which prepay energy for up to 30 years, also required to file annually. Well, the easy answer is
If there's a report of final sale.
Right, if there's a report of final sale. If somebody made the determination that we need to file a report of proposed debt issuance and a report of final sale for this energy prepay bond issue for the benefit of community choice aggregators, then it would, in all likelihood, be subject to the ADTR requirement.
Okay, we have another question. This is related to Marks Roos financings. Jeff, are the following statements correct? One, for the section proceeds used to acquire local obligations, is it correct that this amount should be reported only on the Marks Roos Authority ADTR? And two, the expenditure of the bond proceeds should only be reported on the obligor's ADTR?
I would say generally yes. So this case, we're talking about a true Marks Roos bond pooled financing, in which the proceeds of bonds issued by a joint powers authority are used to purchase concurrently issued securities issued by local obligors, whether they be community facilities districts, assessment district, other public agencies. Yeah, I think the best and most illustrative way to go about reporting that is to do like the question indicates here, and on the report for the authority issued bonds, enter that quantity into the field mentioned here, proceeds used to acquire local obligations, the quantity of the principal plus premium used to purchase the concurrently issued securities, and then proceed with the bulk of the project expenditures reported on the report or reports for the local obligors. Often the way this shakes out is that the bulk of the reportable proceeds are reported as used to purchase the local obligors on the report for the authority issued bonds, and whatever is remaining is used to report issuance costs. And then the most, if not all, of the project costs are then reported on the reports for the local obligations. That's I don't know if I would say that's a best practice, but like from what I've seen, in my view, that's the most illustrative way to file for those types of deals. But again, you know, we keep our fallback answer is discretion of the filer or discretion of the issuer. You know, this is your data. That's another thing that's another fallback answer we have.
Right. Okay. We have another question for Michael. After entering the principal payment amount, it still wants an amount under the accreted interest. The amount should be zero, but will not let me submit the filing because it wants me to submit an amount. So it sounds like a bug. What do you think, Michael?
I'd have to see it to be sure, but some of the lines in the form, they like pre-populate with like a gray 0, and it wants you to actually type in 0. So it's just kind of hard to see. That's probably what it is. So it might just want you to actually go into that box and type in the 0. But if that doesn't work, feel free to email us and I can take a look at the specific report and see if there's something else going on.
Okay, great. Jeff, we had a question come in about being provided a CDIAC number and a password. You want to take that one? How do I find in the portal if this is the first year I'm reporting?
Yeah, the CDIAC number and the password. You don't need passwords anymore. You just need to onboard yourself or have us help you get onboarded to the data portal. And you then would be able to access everything that is reportable via the you know, on the dashboard, like what was went over in the video.
Yeah, we do have
I see the bank provided me.
Yeah, I still need to become a registered filer in order to get into the data portal. If you didn't get a temporary password, there's a user, well, there's a guide on our reporting debt issuance webpage for the data portal logging on. There's a guide there, but reach out to us. We can always help you as well to get access. And then there may be a little bit of follow-up to make sure that the issuer approves you as a filer. Okay, moving on for Michael, how is it determined when the filer or issuer files the ADTR?
We don't have any specific rules or regulations about that. It's really just up to the issuer. Usually there'll be something in the terms of the original deal who's going to be filing the annual reports and disclosure reports and things like that.
Yes, it's really up to the issuer preference. If they want to file the ADTR, they can. If they want to assign a filer or ask a filer to do that, obviously that's their right to do that. So either can do it, as long, you know, and everything pre-populates from that report of final sale. So great. Okay, we're getting down to the end here. Last question so far, unless anybody submits any more. Jeff, could you please clarify when an issue ceases to be reportable? Is it when the bond proceeds have been fully spent or when there's no more principal outstanding?
Both. So if you have, if all the proceeds, if all of the proceeds initially received upon issue of the debt have been spent and all of the principal has been repaid, then it's no longer reportable. Both of those conditions are met, then it's no longer subject to the ADTR requirement.
Okay, and then one last question did come in. It's related to the user profiles. Is there a way to delete prior employees that appear as a contact under an organization? No, I will answer this one. Right now, the data portal basically is pulling all of the information that's been acquired over, 40 years or however long we've had the data coming in from 1984. So they will still appear in there, but you can make them inactive so that, they will not receive anything. You can sort your list. So it just shows the active folks at the top, but there is no way to delete them currently. And then let's see, I haven't filed ADTRs for the last 3 years. Can I get up to date on my filings? Are there any penalties for late filings? Jeff, will you take that question?
There are no penalties for late filings. The statute says in some detail, perhaps not as detailed as we might like, everything that you're supposed to report, that you're required to report. It says absolutely nothing about what happens if you don't report. And, CDIAC is in this context is a data collection and dissemination agency. CDIAC is not an enforcement entity. We're not given enforcement powers of any type, really. The only thing that would happen, and this is subject to some ambiguities as well, a record might show up somewhere as past due or no report on one of our venues where we disseminate this stuff.
Right.
But even that is not a given.
So we publish data on our website under Debt Watch, and there are certain statuses about ADTR reporting that will appear there that is available to the public. So people may see that there's a late report or no report or past due report there. And then we also do a summary of the reports that were due, the reportable issues, and we publish a summary in our Deadline newsletter. So we don't actually have the specific issuers or CDIAC numbers called out, but the article itself will talk about how many reports were filed and how many reports are still outstanding.
And if you go on Debt Watch, you're going to see a whole bunch of things that are listed as past due, which actually aren't, and we're aware of that, and we got to fix that.
So let's see. Okay, a question for Michael. Is there a way to view the previously filed ADTR report?
As of right now, through the data portal, it'll only allow you to see the most recently filed report. But if you go onto our website to the Debt Watch section, you can view all of the previously filed ADTRs through there.
Okay. I'm looking at these other questions. All right, a question for Jeff. How do I get up to date on my filings?
The first thing you need to determine is whether the report of final sale, the report of proposed debt issuance, and the report of final sale were ever filed in the first place for whatever you're concerned with, whichever agency, whoever you're representing. And if that is, once that's taken care of, then basically you can file at any time. Going back to the last question, you're not going to incur any penalty. We're happy to get data whenever we get it, however we get it. I'm thinking of an example of a financial service provider who we communicate with often. They their services were retained by a particular city, and they were going through this city's records and said, hey, you did these 2 equipment leases back a couple of years ago. Did you know these were reportable to CDIAC? Did you ever file a time of issuance report? And they said, no, CD, we had to report that. And, well, yes, indeed. So, even after, 2 years or so had elapsed between the time the deal went down, they did the, they did the time of issue reporting, the report of final sale, and then followed up with the annuals subsequent to that, and then it was taken care of. So first thing is, whenever you realize that it needs to be done, again, we're not going to come after you. File the initial reports, the time of issuance reports, proposed and the final, and then once we get those processed, you can go ahead and do the however many annual filings you need to do to get current.
And then similarly, we had a question, if you failed to file last year's ADTR and are trying to get up to date, can you file the 2021 report and then the 2022 report on the same day, or do you need to wait a day for the 2021 report to upload to the system? Michael,
okay, yeah.
Go ahead, Michael. You can answer that.
Yeah, the way the data portal is set up, you won't be able to file any subsequent reports until the one that you just filed has been kind of processed and approved into our system. Normal processing time would be about 2 days maybe. If you need it more quickly, if you're trying to get them all done, you can just send us an email saying that you submitted a past due report, and we can usually get to it on the same day so you can keep filing the rest of the reports.
Great. Okay. So even though we talked about late filings and, if you fail to file, getting up to date and all of that, while there are currently no penalties for late filings and we don't have an enforcement capacity, the deadlines and the requirements are in statute. So we just highly encourage you to get up to date with your filings and that you're in compliance with statute. We strongly encourage that. Looks like another question's come in. Let's see. The format of the ADTR is different than in previous years. This year's filing shows total cost of issuance from the report of final sale. This number ties to the report of final sale, but it looks misleading based on the explanation for the reports of final sale from 2021 can no longer be amended. The cost of issuance information from the report of final sale is just a reference value. There could be reported on the report of final sale more or less costs of issuance that you might consider reporting on the ADTR. It's entirely up to the issuer. We just need to know how the proceeds were spent. So, for example, if bond proceeds were used for a portion of the cost of issuance, only report the amount of cost of issuance that was paid from the proceeds, not necessarily any additional cash that you might have used or any other revenue source for those costs of issuance. So that is just a reference field for the user, the filer, to just know when they're putting those expenditures in. So in my example, I just used the $90,000 amount because it was easiest for me just to show that as an example of how I would create an expenditure account for that and then plug in that expenditure, the fund category, I mean, and then the expenditure. So, you know, it's entirely up to the issuer how you display those costs.
That doesn't appear on the PDF, does it? That reference value from the COI from the final?
I'd have to look. I don't recall.
Okay.
Okay, that is all of the questions we received. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us your questions. And of course, our staff will follow up with a reply. Not surprisingly, our data collection and outreach unit has been really busy working on reviewing submitted reports and answering questions users have about the new data portal, especially with over 14,000 ADTRs due to be filed by the end of this month. The data we collect on the reports is published every month in our Deadline newsletter and posted on our website. For example, in the October 2022 Deadline newsletter, we published an article about data portal user registration and user profile enhancements. These Deadline newsletters can be accessed through our publications webpage. I'd like to thank Jeff and Michael for joining me to answer your questions, and also to thank our CDIAC education team, Anna Ramirez, Angela Ayala, and Randy Auer, for helping to facilitate this webinar. Great job, everyone. Next slide. Thank you. To those watching, please feel free to connect with CDIAC via Twitter, LinkedIn, or by subscribing to our listserv. You can find links to those platforms on CDIAC's homepage. We have some upcoming education events which may be of interest to our listeners. In a little less than 3 weeks is our Public Funds Investment Strategy and Practice program, being held in person in Southern California in partnership with the California Municipal Treasurers Association. The event will feature an interactive workshop that provides attendees the opportunity to participate in the application of concepts and strategies explored in the Public Funds Investment Essentials webinar series. At the end of March, we are offering a 2-day in-person event on municipal market disclosure in Northern California. Day 1 of this seminar will focus on the fundamentals of disclosure, covering current rules for primary and continuing disclosure practices by public agencies, including reporting requirements to CDIAC and the new data portal. Day 2 will focus on evolving disclosure practices for labeled debt such as green or sustainability bonds, as well as disclosure practices for cyber risk and climate change. There are many ways to reach us. Your ideas are always welcome. Please let us know how we can help you. In fact, a survey will pop up immediately following the end of this webinar where you can let us know if you would like more webinars about the data portal or any issues you have. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to you joining us again for future programming. This ends our broadcast. So long, stay well, and have a great day, everyone.